She didn't destroy you. The version of her you created did. The soft voice, the perfect smile, the elegance, the warmth, the eyes that told you she saw you, the stories she told about past pain, the way she said she believed in you. You took it all at face value, and you began building a future around a mask, not because you were stupid, but because you were sincere. You believed what she showed you. You believed what she let you feel. And now, in the silence she left behind, you're sitting in the rubble of an illusion you helped construct. And you're asking yourself the wrong question. Why did she leave? But the better question, the Machiavellian question is, why did I believe so quickly? That's the root, not her betrayal, your blindness, not her perfection, your projection. And if you're honest, you saw the signs. You felt the moments when her tone changed, when the admiration turned cold, when her stories about old relationships didn't quite add up, when her questions started feeling like surveillance, when her softness became performance. But you ignored those moments. You told yourself it was stress. You told yourself she needed more reassurance, more time, more love. And so you gave more. You adjusted more. You explained more. And in doing so, you did the one thing a man must never do. You gave authority to a mask. You stopped observing and started worshiping. And what you worshipped wasn't her. It was your fantasy of her. That's why the pain is so deep. Not because she was exceptional, but because you tied your clarity, your hope, your peace to a version of her that never truly existed. And when the mask slipped, when she began to show you the chaos underneath, you didn't walk away. You argued with it. You tried to fix it. You tried to love it back into being the image you adored. But illusions don't respond to love. They only respond to distance, to silence, to power. This is your first lesson. The most dangerous woman is never the loud one, never the obviously chaotic one. It's the one who looks ideal, who moves with grace, who speaks your language, who knows how to mirror your values. Because that woman disarms you faster. She lowers your defenses by appearing already aligned. She doesn't fight for power directly. She gets you to give it away willingly, through compliments, through intimacy, through flattery so sharp it becomes invisible. She studies what you want to hear, and she says it, until you stop verifying, until you stop watching, until you're emotionally leveraged. She didn't break you, you broke yourself by suspending judgment, by treating beauty as proof, by mistaking alignment for trust, and now you're angry. But anger is not clarity. Anger is what you feel when the truth is forcing itself into a space you protected with denial. Let it in, not to punish her, but to extract the pattern, to see how the next one will come. Because she will. And she will look just as perfect. The world will not warn you about women like this, because the world worships the same illusion. It flatters beauty. It trusts softness. It elevates appearance over outcome. And most men fall into the same trap. They think love is a reward, that if they're good enough, loyal enough, present enough, she'll stay. But staying is not her default. Staying is a calculation, and the woman who calculates with a mask on will always walk away once she's extracted what she needed. So stop calling it heartbreak. Start calling it miscalculation. Stop calling it betrayal. Start calling it tuition. You paid for the lesson. Now learn it. The mask is always most beautiful when it's most dangerous. And next time, you don't fall in love with the performance. You study it. Because until you do, you will keep mistaking danger for destiny. She wasn't your soulmate. She wasn't your forever. She wasn't sent to complete you. She was sent to measure you. And the truth is, you failed the test. Not because you were evil or foolish, but because you were untrained. You mistook emotion for evidence. You mistook intensity for alignment. You mistook chemistry for character. You walked into a game of appearances and offered your truth as collateral. But she didn't come to build with you. She came to study you, to see what you'd reveal when you believed she was safe, to see how fast you'd drop your standards once she mirrored your values. She came to map your boundaries, not to follow them, but to find where they ended. That is what you never saw. You thought she was genuine because she cried, because she told you she had never met a man like you, because she talked about the future. But all of that was the interview. The real test didn't begin when she smiled. It began when she got bored, when she started testing your tone, when she teased your beliefs, when she started acting out just to see how long it would take you to fold. That's where the lesson lived, not in the beauty but in the moments where your logic wavered in the presence of her charm. And when she began to withdraw, you took it as a call to give more, to fix the energy, to explain yourself, to compromise. And in doing so, you failed the test twice. First, for believing the illusion. Second, for negotiating with it. The high-value man doesn't explain to chaos. He doesn't lower his frame to match her moods. He doesn't try to win her back when she leaves it. He lets her leave and watches what happens next. Because the woman who is real, the one who is not operating behind a mask, will feel the structure of his silence and correct herself. But the mask uses your fear of loss to extract more. You weren't just tested by her. You were tested by yourself, by your need to be chosen, by your need to be seen. And the illusion worked because it matched the story you wanted to believe, that there is a woman so beautiful, so soft, so emotionally articulate that she could never become a threat. But Machiavelli knew. The greatest threats to power are those who arrive looking like peace. Those who speak your values but resist your order. Those who understand your mission but don't follow your leadership. Those who play the role so well you forget there are stakes. And this is the lesson you walk away with now. A woman is not proven by her performance in the beginning. She is proven by what she does when structure is applied, when silence is enforced, when boundaries are tested. That's when you see whether she's real or rehearsed. And the more convincing the rehearsal, the more dangerous the collapse. So stop looking at her as a loss. She wasn't your crown. She was your mirror. She showed you where you lacked discernment. She exposed your addiction to beauty without gravity. She revealed how quickly you trade strategy for sensation. She was never meant to stay. She was meant to reveal. And now that she's gone, the only thing that matters is how you rebuild. Not softer, but colder. Not louder, but clearer. Not bitter, but surgical. This wasn't the end of your story. It was the filter before the real one begins. She doesn't come in chaos. She comes in calm. She doesn't raise her voice. She lowers yours. She doesn't demand control. She inspires you to give it away. The most dangerous woman does not shake your world violently. She melts into it quietly, perfectly, with precision. And by the time you realize what she is, you've already compromised every standard you once believed was unshakable. Because she didn't challenge your power, she praised it, until it was no longer hers to fear, until it was something she could guide. And then, only then, did the sabotage begin. Not with drama, but with gentle manipulation, a shift in tone, a passive critique, a subtle withdrawal. And you, thinking you were safe, adjusted. Understand this. Power doesn't fall to confrontation, it falls to seduction, to the performance of ideal alignment, to the woman who listens too closely, mirrors too accurately, responds too smoothly. She doesn't argue, she agrees. And in that agreement, you begin to relax. You stop testing, you stop verifying. You assume alignment because it feels so natural. But what you're really experiencing is the most dangerous camouflage, perfected resonance. The ability to match your values, your mission, your speech patterns so closely that you begin to treat the mask as the woman, and the woman as truth. You believed she was special because she was beautiful, because she was articulate, because she seemed to understand your depth. But beauty does not signal virtue. Articulation does not signal alignment. And understanding does not signal loyalty. The most dangerous woman looks ideal because she knows that danger dressed in elegance is rarely confronted. You defend her. You justify her. You tell yourself that her unpredictability is your fault, that her detachment is her trauma, that her instability is your lack of patience. But none of that is true. The truth is simple. She was never what you thought she was. She was what you projected onto her. You see, illusion doesn't work unless you already want to believe it. And most men walk through life waiting to believe that the perfect woman exists. The one who is beautiful, soft, supportive, emotionally intelligent, sexually open, loyal without question. And yours completely. So when a woman arrives who plays that role with precision, your logic shuts down. Your discernment goes dormant. You stop observing and start investing. And that's when the damage begins. Because no man loses to her beauty, he loses to his blindness. This is what Machiavelli understood. Appearances are everything. But the wise man does not believe the appearance. He observes its behavior under pressure, under boredom, under silence, and most of all when it no longer benefits her to pretend. Because that's when the mask slips, and by the time it does, most men are too invested to walk away clean. Their heart is involved, their future is intertwined, their logic is compromised. The dangerous woman isn't dangerous because she attacks. She's dangerous because she understands your architecture, and she rewires it quietly, subtly, until the man you were is only a memory. You think she's ideal because she fits you, but anything that fits too quickly, too easily, was designed for control, not connection. So remember this. The most dangerous woman doesn't look dangerous. She looks like everything you ever wanted, until you realize that everything she gave was scripted, and everything she took was real. What you fell for wasn't her. It was your reflection. She mirrored your intensity, your ambition, your language of love. She nodded when you spoke about legacy. She repeated your values like she believed them. She said, "You're different," but only after you gave her a map of what different meant to you. She wasn't revealing herself, she was adapting. And adaptation, in the hands of a woman with no center, is manipulation wrapped in admiration. You thought it was compatibility. It was compliance, a short-term act to access long-term leverage. And here's the Machiavellian principle most men refuse to accept. There is no such thing as raw authenticity during seduction. The beginning is always an act, always a pitch, always an audition. But the dangerous woman never exits the role. Even after she secures your investment, she keeps you within the illusion, just long enough to gain control over the narrative. Until one day her affection has conditions. Her approval becomes currency. Her softness starts arriving late and leaving early. And you're still trying to get back to the performance, not realizing it was never real. She isn't the woman you remember from the first 3 weeks. That version of her existed only to lower your guard, only to make you override your caution. Because the man who believes he's found peace will not enforce standards. He will not interrogate alignment. He will defend the illusion, even when it begins to bleed. And that is where she gains power. Not through dominance, through comfort, through the subtle rearranging of your instincts so that silence becomes alarming and her validation becomes your compass. Her true self, the one she hides, has no patience for order, no respect for your frame. She doesn't want a king. She wants access to the crown. And the easiest way to gain that access is not by rebellion but by reflection. She doesn't confront your strength. She romanticizes it, until you start bending it to make her more comfortable, until you justify her instability, until you call her inconsistency trauma instead of tactics. This is how good the performance is. She never tells you to lower your standards. She simply creates moments where your standards seem unnecessary. She never mocks your leadership. She just makes your silence feel cold. And slowly your world softens, not from confrontation but from applause, from the illusion of agreement, from the sense that you've finally been understood. But the only thing she ever understood was how badly you wanted to be understood, and she used it. Not because she's evil, but because you were available to it. So burn this into your memory. Performance is not proof. Alignment is not admiration. And if you're still vetting her based on how she makes you feel instead of how she responds to your boundaries, you are falling in love with an act and ignoring the director. She isn't who she showed you. She is who she became when you tried to lead. Every woman can be graceful when she's excited. Every woman can be loyal when she's enchanted. But excitement is not a test. It's a stage. The real revelation begins when the spotlight fades, when the routine sets in, when the flowers are no longer new and the stories have already been told. Boredom is the pressure test, and how she responds to it is the clearest glimpse into the raw material of her character. Because boredom strips away the fantasy. It reveals what remains when validation, attention, novelty no longer fuel her. And the woman who cannot sit inside peace without disrupting it is the one who will sabotage every structure you build. You thought her restlessness was just emotional depth. You thought her dissatisfaction meant you weren't trying hard enough. But no, my friend, that was her mask slipping. That was the reality you refused to acknowledge. that her nervous system is addicted to chaos, that stillness terrifies her, that the absence of drama makes her reach for conflict, not because you deserve it, but because without it she feels unseen. The dangerous woman does not destroy you in the high moments. She destroys you slowly, subtly, in the in-between. She injects uncertainty when life is calm. She plants suspicion when things are stable. She pokes at your tone, questions your motives, reinterprets your silence, not because something is wrong, but because peace makes her irrelevant. And in that irrelevance, she reaches for control. You wanted partnership. She wanted an emotional theater. And boredom is the moment that reveals the truth, whether she is built for discipline or addicted to performance. Because the woman who is whole, the woman who is aligned, will embrace the silence. She will use it to build. She will protect it like fire. But the mask disintegrates in silence, because silence doesn't offer applause, and applause is what sustains her illusion. This is the test most men fail. They keep trying to entertain, to perform, to re-earn the version of her they met at the start. They confuse her agitation with need, her withdrawal with loneliness. And they start chasing something that never existed. They think if they take another trip, plan another gesture, offer another layer of vulnerability, she'll return to softness. But softness was never her nature. It was her currency. And once you spent yours, she had no reason to offer it again. So now you know. You don't test her by how she loves when she's lit up. You test her by how she reacts when the fire dies down, when the evenings are quiet, when the praise stops, when your attention returns to your mission. Does she support it or resent it? Does she align or provoke? That is the measurement. Not how high she soars, but how steady she walks. Boredom is not a flaw. It's a filter. And the woman who cannot face it without creating destruction is not in love with you. She's in love with distraction. And no man on a mission should ever tolerate that. She told you stories about him, the ex, the narcissist, the one who didn't communicate, the one who couldn't handle her strength. And you, thinking you were wise, empathetic, emotionally present, nodded. You told her she deserved better. You swore you'd never become that man. But here's what you missed. The way she framed the past was your preview of the future. The man she once adored, now painted as a villain. The man she once submitted to, now described as controlling. You didn't hear it for what it was. But you should have. Because her stories weren't just emotional history. They were confession if you were sharp enough to decode it. The way a woman speaks about her past relationships reveals her understanding of responsibility. When she paints herself only as the victim, when every story positions her as blameless, when no pattern is acknowledged, when every breakup was just bad luck or his insecurity, you are speaking to someone who will rewrite you the moment she outgrows you. Because a woman who cannot speak about her past with self-awareness will never live the present with discipline. She's not telling you about him to bond. She's telling you how she processes conflict. She's telling you what happens when her boredom arrives, when your leadership offends her ego, when your mission overshadows her attention. And if every past man was a monster, then you need to ask, how does she choose? How does she attract? How does she behave when challenged? Because if she doesn't take any ownership, it means she doesn't understand the war she creates. And the woman who cannot see the war she creates will always call your defense abuse. This is why Machiavellian thinking is essential. You don't listen to her words, you listen to her patterns. You don't believe the pain until you verify the timeline. You don't accept her side until you observe her behavior when her will is crossed. And if she speaks about a man who gave her structure, who asked her to slow down, who made her face herself, and she calls him toxic, she's not describing him. She's warning you. You were so eager to be different that you didn't stop to ask why she chose him at all. What about him attracted her? Why did she stay? What in her needed the very chaos she now pretends to hate? These are not questions for confrontation. These are filters for selection. The man who listens without analysis is the man who becomes the next story. Remember, women do not always lie with malice, but they often lie with omission, with emotional reframing, with stories rehearsed so well they believe them. But the Machiavellian man knows history is not told honestly. It's told advantageously. And if you don't learn to interrogate the advantage, you will walk into a performance where the script has already been written, and your exit has already been planned. So listen carefully, not to what she says about him, but to what she reveals about herself, about her taste in men, about her tolerance for chaos, about her ability to reflect or her addiction to blame. Because if you don't filter the past, you will become its next chapter. Not because you deserved it, but because she never learned to carry anything other than the victim role, and you never learned to vet her before believing her. You thought you were earning trust by listening. You thought that hearing her pain made you close. But you weren't building connection. You were entering her trial. And she had already picked the role you would play. The man who understands. The man who won't hurt her like the last one. But do you know what that really means? It means she sees you as the reaction to her past, not as a man with a future she must qualify for. That's not respect. That's emotional convenience. And men who enter through the door of sympathy rarely exit with authority. Because sympathy blurs judgment. It makes you overcompensate. You start giving softness where structure is needed. You excuse the passive aggression, the mood swings, the moments where her chaos leaks into your routine. You tell yourself, she's been through a lot. You try to be her healer. But the more you heal, the more you notice. Nothing is changing. In fact, the more support you give, the more resentment she develops. Why? Because now you've become her mirror. And the more stable you are, the more she has to confront that the damage isn't external, it's internal. And instead of gratitude, you receive distance, bitterness, and eventually, rejection. A woman who hasn't resolved her past cannot build your future. You may believe you're the exception, that your empathy can fix what other men broke. But Machiavelli warned, never enter a decaying structure you didn't create. Because when it collapses, they won't blame the builders, they'll blame the last man standing inside. That man will be you. This doesn't mean you can't be with a woman who has suffered, but it means you must watch how she carries it. If her entire narrative is a showcase of emotional wreckage but her behavior shows no evolution, you are entering a story that always ends the same. And when it ends, she'll be telling someone else about you. So listen sharply. Ask the quiet questions. Where is the pattern? Where is the ownership? When did she hold the line instead of just react? If she doesn't speak about the past with self-awareness, if she can't articulate how her own choices shape the outcomes, she hasn't grown. She's only repackaged the wound. And if you ignore that, you'll become the next villain in her script. Not because you failed, but because you succeeded in holding her accountable. And the woman who lives by the victim narrative does not reward accountability, she resents it. That's why her stories matter. Not for their content, but for what they reveal about her character. The woman who blames every man before you will someday turn that same blame on you. And the only way to avoid that fate is to stop falling for the emotional prologue and start watching for the behavioral sequel. You thought she craved leadership, that her chaos was just waiting for your clarity, that all she needed was a man with a plan, a spine, a direction, and she would finally rest. But here's what you didn't understand. Not every woman wants to be led. Some want to be near strength, not under it. Some want the appearance of masculine order in their life, just not the cost of submitting to it. They'll praise your structure, admire your confidence, echo your mission, until the moment your authority threatens their autonomy. And when that moment arrives, the woman who fears structure doesn't soften. She sabotages. She begins with resistance dressed as independence. She questions your tone. She jokes about your rules. She suggests your discipline is outdated, your goals too rigid, your systems too controlling. But these are not insights. They are signs. Signs that her spirit is allergic to authority that cannot be manipulated, that her version of love only exists inside dynamics she can steer, that as long as your leadership stays symbolic, she applauds it. But the moment it becomes real, measurable, enforced, unwavering, she will try to erode it. Not loudly but subtly, with sarcasm, with distance, with the weapon of mood. This is the woman who looked perfect at first, supportive, engaging, passionate. But her passion had no center. Her support had no cost. And her engagement only lasted as long as your leadership stayed adjustable. Because she doesn't want to be protected. She wants to be included without condition. And the man who tries to lead her will be tested endlessly, not because he's wrong, but because he represents something she cannot tolerate, a world where her feelings don't dictate the frame. She'll say she wants strength, but only if it worships her. She'll say she respects direction, but only if she can debate it. She'll say she loves masculine energy, but only if it bends when she cries. This is not submission. It is sabotage disguised as compatibility. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse her friction for depth. You'll tell yourself, she challenges me because she believes in me. She challenges you because structure to her is suffocation. And her ego would rather burn down your vision than serve within it. Machiavelli wrote of republics that collapse not from external enemies but from citizens who cannot accept law. It is no different in relationships. The woman who fears structure will always romanticize the man with no standards. Not because she loves him more, but because she can control him. And control is what she seeks, even if she calls it freedom. Even if she paints it as balance. Even if she claims it's about equality. Equality to her means the power to veto your leadership. And the moment she senses your authority is real, not symbolic, she turns from supporter to saboteur. She doesn't scream. She withdraws. She doesn't confront you directly. She exhausts you emotionally. She makes you second-guess your tone, your standards, your plan. And slowly, she dismantles the masculine energy she once praised until she's bored. And when she leaves, she'll say you were too rigid, too intense, too serious. But what she really means is this: you couldn't be moved, and she needed a man who could be managed. So listen to me now. If she resists the law, she will never protect the kingdom. If she resents your frame, she will never build within it. And if she fears your structure, she is not your partner. She is your opponent in disguise. The beginning is a costume. She shows up polished, poised, emotionally fluent. Her words are chosen carefully. Her empathy is well practiced. Her laugh arrives at the right time. She mirrors your ambition. She praises your direction. She tells you she's never met someone like you. And you believe her. Because she's consistent. Because she doesn't challenge your values. Because she listens so well. But here's what you fail to see. You're not seeing her. You're seeing her campaign. Every illusion needs a window. And the window is always the beginning. It's the phase where she's not revealing, she's auditioning. She's not herself. She's who she thinks you want. And most men fall for this. Because they vet when she's polished, when she's performing, when she's trying to impress. But you don't vet a woman when she's polished. You vet her when she thinks you've stopped watching. You watch when she's ignored, when the spotlight shifts, when your attention returns to your mission. You watch how she behaves when she's no longer center stage. Does she support or sabotage? Does she serve the rhythm or disrupt it? The mask doesn't fall off in arguments. It slips during boredom, during silence, during moments where her praise no longer earns her advancement. That's when the real woman appears. This is why the Machiavellian man doesn't rush intimacy. He lets time test. He observes when she's emotionally cold, when she feels overlooked, when her suggestion is denied. Because most women can play the role of muse when the music is beautiful. But only the right one stays soft when she's no longer being serenaded. You think you know her because you've heard her stories, seen her tears, watched her hold your hand during your worst moments. But that was still the play, still the mask. The true woman doesn't appear until the effort stops giving her leverage, until your discipline outpaces her comfort, until your silence makes her nervous instead of powerful. Then you see whether she's safe or strategic. Never vet her during the flattery phase. Never assume alignment because of emotional symmetry. Don't confuse shared vocabulary with shared values. Words are cheap. They are the easiest part to mirror. Watch what she does when she feels unseen, uncelebrated, unsure of where she stands. Watch whether her respect is consistent or whether it was just the entrance fee to your attention. Because the most dangerous women are not messy at first. They are clean, almost perfect, and their perfection doesn't prove safety. It hides the absence of substance. And the man who evaluates her during her campaign, he will always be shocked when the election ends and the policies change. So slow down. Stop judging her by how she speaks when you're watching. Start judging her by what she does when she thinks you're not. She overwhelmed you with affection. She called you king. She told you that you were rare. She matched your rhythm, matched your ambition, matched your pain. She didn't just understand you, she anticipated you. You weren't just compatible, you were aligned. And it felt like destiny. But here is the Machiavellian truth. It wasn't love, it was leverage. And the faster she gave it, the more dangerous it became. Genuine love doesn't flood you. It studies you. It grows with patience. It tests before it attaches. But the mask needs your investment quickly. It doesn't have time for gradual unfolding. It needs your trust now. It needs your vulnerability now. It needs you attached before you've observed. Because if you observe too long, you might see behind the curtain. You might notice the lack of foundation. You might sense the emptiness behind the flattery. So the strategy is simple. Accelerate the emotional intimacy so you forget to measure the structure. This is why the most dangerous woman doesn't seduce you sexually. She seduces you emotionally. She offers safety too early. She offers understanding too soon. She says things like, "I've never felt this comfortable with anyone by the second week." And if you don't know the game, you take it as confirmation that you're finally being seen. But what you're really being is softened, primed, programmed to ignore the red flags that will come later. Once she knows you'll explain them away. You believed her affection was real because it was intense, but intensity is not intimacy. Intensity is performance, and the mask always opens with a standing ovation, because it knows the audience needs to be disarmed. And if the man watching is emotionally honest but strategically blind, he'll open himself up fully. And when he does, he becomes predictable. And predictable men are the easiest to control. You thought she gave early affection because she saw your soul. But what she really saw was your potential, your usefulness, your energy, your schedule, your resources, and most of all, your hunger for peace. And so she gave you peace, not from herself but from the past. She gave you relief. She gave you the illusion that you were finally done searching, that you were finally safe. And then, once you built your world around that feeling, she changed. The text slowed, the warmth cooled, the validation evaporated. And you thought it was your fault, that maybe you were too intense, too distant, too masculine, and you adjusted, you explained, you gave more. But the problem wasn't your reaction. It was your failure to see that the affection you missed was never sustainable, because it was never real. Love bombing is not a gift. It is a test. It is bait. It is the first move in a power game you didn't know you were playing. And if you don't learn to spot it early, you will spend months or years trying to resurrect something that was never alive to begin with. So burn this into your memory. Real affection comes slowly. Real loyalty walks in, not dances in. Real women don't overwhelm, they reveal. And the ones who flood you too fast? They're not falling, they're framing. She didn't argue with your vision, she praised it. She didn't question your ambition, she echoed it. She said she wanted to build with you. That she'd never met a man so focused, so disciplined, so clear. You believed her because she used your language. She used your metaphors. She studied your values like a script and performed them back to you with precision. And you mistook that performance for alignment. But here's what you missed. She didn't love your mission. She mirrored it to gain access to it. Machiavelli warned that the quickest way to disarm a ruler is not through rebellion but through applause. Through agreement so thorough, so effortless, that the prince forgets to secure the gates. And you? You didn't secure them. You opened them. You gave her access to your time, your plans, your identity. Because she looked like she belonged in it. But she never asked what she needed to become to stay inside it. She assumed, and you rewarded the assumption. This is how strategic women operate. They do not challenge your purpose. They orbit it. They position themselves close enough to feel essential, but not so close that they can be measured. They mimic your goals without ever sharing the burden of your discipline, and slowly they insert themselves, not to build, but to reshape the frame. Because once she has emotional access, her next goal is influence, and once she has influence, her next move is interruption. You thought she was on your team, but she was only on your frequency long enough to get a seat at the table. Once seated, she began moving the chairs. She started asking for more time, for more softness, for you to slow down, for you to make space, not because she wanted to help your mission, but because she wanted your mission to bend toward her needs. And the man who doesn't see this coming begins to rot from the inside. He loses his fire not because she extinguished it, but because he compromised it. He began to make adjustments, little ones at first. Less focus, fewer hours, a different tone. The edge dulls, the drive softens, and she notices. She feels it. She sees the power she once mirrored, and she begins to resent it. Because she never wanted your kingdom. She wanted your attention. And when the kingdom started to demand more than she could control, she began calling it toxic, cold, unsafe. This is the pattern. The woman who mirrors your mission too quickly is often not aligning. She's entering, gaining access, testing where the leverage lies, and the only way to protect yourself is to slow down the inclusion, to watch how she behaves when she doesn't get instant status, to see whether she loves your rhythm or just wants to co-author your momentum. Because the woman who truly belongs in your mission doesn't mirror it. She magnifies it. She doesn't need to pretend. She shows up, aligned in her own center. And if you never learn the difference, you will keep giving your kingdom to women who applaud your goals only long enough to reroute them. She doesn't show up demanding destruction. She shows up asking for little things, more time, more softness, more openness. She tells you she wants connection, vulnerability, balance. She doesn't criticize your mission. She asks to be included in it. She doesn't challenge your leadership. She simply wants to co-create. And you, blind to the tactic, see these as signs of maturity. You believe she's emotionally intelligent, communicative, evolved. But what you're really seeing is a negotiation not with your heart, but with your spine. Because what she's asking for is access to your frame. And once she has that access, she will slowly begin to reshape what made you powerful in the first place. The dangerous woman rarely attacks your ambition directly. She asks you to soften it, to slow it, to make it safer for her. And in the beginning, you do. You reduce your edge, you adjust your schedule, you explain your boundaries, you dilute your momentum. Not all at once, but piece by piece, because you think that by giving her what she asks for, you'll preserve the harmony. What you're really doing is teaching her that your kingdom is editable. And a woman who believes your structure is flexible will always push to see how far it bends. What she demands is the blueprint. And if you listen with a Machiavellian ear, you'll understand. Her demands predict her sabotage. If she demands control of your time, she will destroy your focus. If she demands influence over your decisions, she will destroy your authority. If she demands more of your emotional bandwidth, she will destroy your leadership. Because she's not making requests, she's planting flags. And when you grant them, she doesn't feel loved. She feels superior. And respect cannot survive superiority. You think compromise is maturity. But when the feminine fears structure, compromise becomes corrosion. She doesn't want your world. She wants your world rearranged around her. And if you give it, she loses attraction. Why? Because the very thing that drew her in, your immovability, has been replaced with negotiation. Watch what she asks for. Not because her needs are illegitimate, but because her priorities reveal her limits. If her first requests are about comfort, not mission, not alignment, not values, you are not in the presence of a partner. You are in the presence of a reformer, one who will, over time, turn your discipline into dysfunction and call it love. Machiavelli taught that power, once shared unnecessarily, invites rebellion. Your power must be felt, not distributed. And the moment you start adjusting your frame to meet her emotional weather, you become a ruler with no law. So study her demands. They are not random. They are roadmaps. They show you what she will eventually oppose. And if you keep giving, hoping to earn peace, understand, you're not earning peace. You're giving her the tools to tear you down gently. With your permission, you kept calling her beautiful, even when she disrespected your time, even when she challenged your tone in front of others, even when she ignored your standards, questioned your goals, softened your edge. You called her beautiful when her actions were mutiny, when her mouth said, "I support you," but her behavior pulled you away from everything that made you strong. But understand this. A woman is not beautiful if she undermines your frame. She may be lovely to the eye, but if her presence dissolves your clarity, she is not beautiful. She is dangerous. Her beauty became a weapon because you never defined the cost. You saw her looks as value, you treated her attention like a reward, and that made you soft, because beauty without loyalty is chaos in disguise, and chaos does not respect the man it seduces. It consumes him. One request at a time, one exception at a time. Until the man who once walked with command now walks in confusion, trying to maintain peace inside a relationship where he no longer holds the reins. You didn't lose her when she left. You lost yourself while she was still there. That's what makes her dangerous. Not the leaving, but the quiet erosion she initiated the moment you stopped enforcing your order. She knew her looks could keep you apologizing, keep you explaining, keep you proving your intentions while she tested your resolve. And the more you bent, the more she pulled. Not because she hated you, but because she could no longer feel your center. And the feminine, when disconnected from masculine law, either drifts or attacks. This is where the world lies to you. It tells you to pursue beauty, to impress her, to win her loyalty through provision. But beauty is not a virtue, it is a variable. And if she uses it to erode your rhythm, to extract from your structure, to weaken the discipline that made you attractive in the first place, you are not in the presence of a woman. You are in the presence of a mirror for your own undeveloped masculinity. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must never let softness compromise his ability to govern, and this is no less true for the man who governs himself. The moment you excuse a woman's disloyalty because of how she looks is the moment you declare yourself a man who negotiates his own laws, and a man who negotiates his laws will be ruled by someone else's. True beauty aligns with structure. True beauty amplifies discipline. True beauty softens within law, not against it. So next time she walks in and your body reacts, your memory smiles, your logic starts to sleep, ask yourself this: does her presence make me sharper or softer? Does her gaze keep me focused or distract me from who I was becoming? If her beauty pulls you out of your purpose, it is not beauty. It is bait. And the man who falls for bait will always confuse sabotage for seduction. You weren't weak. You were under illusion. You weren't a failure. You were misinformed. You weren't broken. You were convinced, by her words, by her timing, by the way she looked at you when you opened up and gave her the map to your soul. She didn't overpower you. You surrendered. And you did it not because you lacked strength, but because you were never taught how to use it. You believed that love was noble, that honesty would protect you, that vulnerability was the bridge to trust. But Machiavelli knew, the bridge that is always open is the first one an enemy crosses. You think back now to the moment she cried, to the night she said you were everything, to the promises she made. You remember the intimacy, the laughter, the late-night calls where it felt like she understood you in a way no one else ever had. You built your world around that feeling. You stopped measuring. You stopped leading. You let her become the compass, not because you were spineless, but because you were sincere. And sincerity, when unguarded, is not strength. It's an invitation to be conquered. That's the cruelty of the illusion. It doesn't come wearing a mask of violence. It comes as validation. It comes through shared playlists and whispered promises. It comes wrapped in a voice that sounds like home. But home is not a place where your standards decay. Home is not where your ambition is questioned, your silence disrespected, your leadership called controlling. If you thought that was love, it's because the illusion taught you that warmth is safety. But warmth without structure, it burns. You didn't fail because you cared. You failed because you didn't protect what you cared about. And that's not weakness, that's inexperience. That's the condition of a man raised in a world that tells him to be soft, to win love, to be open, to prove loyalty, to be available, to prove worth. But availability without cost is not masculinity. It's exposure. And what is always exposed is always exploited, not by evil, but by nature. Nature does not reward the undefended, and neither does the feminine. If you were overrun, manipulated, discarded, understand, it wasn't because you lacked value, it's because you failed to structure your value. You made it easy to access. You gave before testing. You served before observing. You answered questions that were never asked with the intention to understand, but with the intention to map your boundaries. The illusion was never her beauty. It was your blindness. And now that you see it, fully, clearly, coldly, you are no longer broken. You are trained. Trained not to react to performance. Trained to wait before you invest. Trained to see what happens when the flattery stops working. Because the man who can walk through the illusion and not bow to it, he becomes untouchable. You weren't weak. You were watching the wrong signals, but now you know where to look. You were taught to impress, taught to be charming, taught to prove your worth through attentiveness, through praise, through constant emotional availability. You learned to be the performer, to say the right words, to give the right gifts, to offer your time freely as if value was measured in proximity. And it worked, at first. She smiled. She leaned in. She called you sweet. But sweetness is not strategy. And in a world where appearances are currency, your performance only marked you as easy to enter and easy to exit. You weren't leading. You were auditioning. The woman you wanted wasn't evaluating your feelings. She was evaluating your frame, not your personality, but your posture. She wanted to know, would this man protect what he built, or would he bend to keep me comfortable? And when she saw that you bent, that you rearranged yourself to keep her close, that you feared her distance more than you respected your own boundaries, she lost attraction. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you were playing the wrong game. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must be both loved and feared, but when forced to choose, it is safer to be feared. You wanted to be loved first, to be liked, to be accepted, and in doing so, you forgot your first responsibility as a man, to protect your frame, to protect your time, to protect your focus, to protect your name. She doesn't need you to be agreeable. She needs to know you can say no. She doesn't need you to compliment her endlessly. She needs to know that your standards do not shift to preserve peace. Stop trying to impress. The right woman is not moved by your efforts. She's moved by your immovability. She's not drawn to what you give. She's drawn to what you protect. A man who protects his peace, his silence, his mission, his hierarchy, that man does not chase approval. He commands orientation. She follows him because his world doesn't adapt to comfort. His world adapts to clarity. And the ones who cannot align with it are free to leave, without penalty, without bitterness, without negotiation. This is your shift. You don't act to win her. You observe to vet her. You don't adjust to keep her happy. You enforce to keep your foundation intact. You don't love to be chosen. You love once choice has been earned. Because the men who keep playing to impress, they become exhausted, forgettable, replaceable. But the man who builds for protection, he becomes the one she orbits, not because he begged her to, but because leaving him would mean walking back into chaos. And no woman, when faced with that choice, will choose the storm over the structure. So stop auditioning. Start ruling. The wrong woman will turn your kingdom into confusion. But the right woman? She doesn't demand a crown. She strengthens the walls. She doesn't ask to be impressed. She studies how to support. She doesn't need to be flattered into silence. She understands the silence means something is being built. And because she understands it, she protects it. Not with volume, but with rhythm. Not with resistance, but with loyalty. Not with chaos, but with calm that doesn't break under pressure. She doesn't compete with your mission. She amplifies it. And here's what most men never realize. The right woman is not the one who makes you feel something in the moment. She's the one who doesn't interrupt what you're becoming. She doesn't get in the way of your systems, your structure, your focus. She doesn't drain the battery of your purpose with demands to be seen, to be reassured, to be worshipped. She brings her own order into your world, and it harmonizes with yours, not hijacks it. She doesn't try to co-lead what she respects. She follows, not out of weakness, but because she's intelligent enough to see that direction is not oppression when it's based on law. The right woman doesn't seduce you with appearances. She stabilizes you with behavior. You won't need to guess where she stands. Her respect is not conditional on emotion. Her loyalty doesn't fluctuate with your attention. Her softness isn't a tactic. It's a reflection of the fact that your masculinity makes her feel safe enough to rest. Machiavelli understood that a strong prince does not seek a wife who adds noise to the state. He seeks one who brings alliances, who strengthens his legitimacy, who keeps the castle calm when storms rise outside. And you, if you are wise, must do the same. You must stop choosing based on your hunger and start choosing based on your hierarchy. Because not every woman who smiles deserves entry. Not every woman who praises you will support you. And not every woman who says she's ready for a king has the temperament to live under his roof. So what do you look for? Simplicity over spectacle, alignment over intensity, steadiness over emotional stimulation. You look for how she treats your silence, how she adapts when she isn't the center of your focus, how she speaks about your leadership when she's not getting her way. The right woman brings pressure relief, not pressure increase. And when you find her, she won't ask you to soften. She'll tell you she feels more feminine because of how structured you are. You don't need more beauty. You need someone who respects what you're building. And when you find her, you don't adjust for her. You let her choose to enter or walk. And if she stays, it's because she knows that kings don't chase. They construct. You've been taught to chase beauty, to pursue it, to prove yourself to it, to contort your frame around it and call that devotion. You've been trained to see a beautiful woman and ask, how do I keep her? But Machiavelli would ask a colder question. What does her presence cost my kingdom? Because beauty that subtracts from your order is not a reward. It's an invasion. And the man who builds legacy does not kneel to aesthetics. He chooses alignment. And alignment, unlike attraction, is rare. It cannot be faked for long. It cannot be performed without pressure. It only reveals itself when silence is applied. So I'll tell you this one final time. You don't chase beauty. You observe behavior. You study posture. You watch her under boredom, under correction, under your absence. You don't evaluate how much you desire her. You evaluate whether she can carry the silence your world requires. Whether she speaks peace into your system or smuggles chaos inside it, whether she strengthens your frame or slowly bends it under the name of love. A man who rules does not chase, he chooses. And when he chooses, it's not because of appearance, chemistry, or emotion. It's because he saw her structure, and it didn't collapse when his discipline arrived. She didn't beg for comfort, she aligned with consequence. She didn't need to be tamed because she already respected the lion before he roared. And if you don't find that, you walk. Not with anger, not with grief, with strategy, with silence, with the knowledge that a king doesn't lose what resists his law. He releases it. Because every moment you chase the wrong woman, you delay the construction of your world. Every conversation you entertain with a mask steals clarity from your war room. Every time you justify her chaos, you drain the power that was meant for your legacy. You will be tested again. You will meet her again. The beautiful one, the polished one, the soft-spoken one, the emotionally intelligent one. And she will know how to speak your language. She will call you king. She will touch your ego like it's a harp, and you will feel music. But you must not respond to music. You must respond to behavior, and if her behavior fractures your discipline, you don't argue, you don't teach, you don't scold, you disappear. Because the man who knows his worth does not raise his voice, he raises his standard, and he lets silence do the sorting. So leave with this. You weren't destroyed by a woman. You were trained by an illusion. But now that you see, now that the mask is gone, you don't chase beauty anymore. You choose alignment, and you never apologize for enforcing your law. Comment, no more illusions if you now see that it was never about her beauty, but about your blindness. And subscribe, not for hope, but for power. Not to be admired, but to be unshakable. This isn't dating advice, this is Machiavellian clarity, and you were seduced by the mask, but now you wear the crown.